You can be in a crowded room with tons of people around you and still feel alone or lonely. You might be laying in bed next to the partner that you love, but feel disconnected, unable to feel that connection and love and intimacy in the way that you want to. Well, I want you to know this isn't a relationship problem. It's a nervous system pattern. This video is brought to you by my HarperCollins published book, Mind Over Explicit Matter. If you're ready to quit porn and reclaim your life mentally and physically, go over to drtrishleigh.com/book. Your brain is wired for resonance and connection, not just proximity. That's what Fall Out Boy talks about in Let's Be Alone Together. Well, I'm Dr. Trish Leigh, cognitive neuroscientist. Today, I'll show you what's hijacking connection and how it miswires your brain. And then, of course, what you can do to rewire it. So let's start and let's dive in to the hijack. Your nervous system is wired to look for connection. It wants to feel seen, understood, and safe with other people. The Relational Self Network, the RSN, is the system in your brain that builds your own identity through connection with other people. Every time you're with someone, your brain is scanning for those signals. But in modern life, we're often physically close, but without actually feeling emotionally attuned or connected. You might not feel like your emotional needs are being met. So your brain keeps reaching for connection and it keeps finding something that looks close, looks sort of kind of like connection, but it feels empty. So your nervous system expects safety, but it keeps finding shallow echoes instead. You can see that on this slide, that your relational self activation, your relational self network activation in your brain is on the rise when you are out and about and looking for connection. But if you're not attuning in a healthy way with other people, your emotional fulfillment will be low. Not because the relationship is off, maybe it could be, but inherently it doesn't have to be, but because of the way that your brain is performing in a dysregulated way. So what does this feel like to you? You feel alone. That's how you know that your brain has been hijacked. When you go out in real life, it feels flat. Maybe you feel like nobody sees you, or you feel emotionally distant, or perhaps you're restless when you're out in the world with other people. So you might still be able to function, but you don't really feel like you belong there. Many times people feel social anxiety in this way, or they feel completely disconnected with their partners. You know something's missing, but you just can't name it. Well, I can. It is called the Relational Self Network being in a high activation mode. I work with so many clients that love their partners, they love their kids, and they don't want to escape their lives, but something changes and it stops them from connecting. I have one client, he said it like this: I love them, but they feel like a lot of work. He didn't mean responsibility. He meant emotional effort. Being present felt draining. The conversations felt forced. He said he still wanted that closeness, but his body would not let him respond in the way that it used to. He couldn't explain why. He started avoiding intimacy with his wife, not because he didn't care, but because his body wouldn't work in the way that it used to. His nervous system didn't feel safe in the connection anymore. He felt like he constantly had to perform. He totally thought he was failing at his relationships. But of course, when I mapped his brain, we saw something different. What do we see? RSN dysfunction. The desire for connection, it was still there, but his nervous system was no longer able to experience it. That connection was being lost. So his relationships didn't feel regulating to him. They didn't feel good. Instead, they felt stressful. In this way, the brain learns to associate other people with effort instead of with safety. How does this hijack happen? Well, in today's day and age, it's mostly through the screen. Just think about it logically. When you are in front of your screen all the time, and especially if you are going back to high dopamine content, so of course, hypersexual content is at the top, explicit matter. Social media with its scrolling and its seeking, even streaming, even long form content. When you're going back to that high dopamine supernormal stimuli, the reward circuits in your brain have become internalized and your identity is actually completely affected. Identity becomes fragmented, meaning that before people were sitting in front of screens all the time getting hits of dopamine, they would be out in the world seeking for attunement and co-regulation from other people. This is how the miswire happens. What your brain is looking for is this. It's looking for connection. It's looking for conversation. It's looking for your relational self network to activate when you're with people. This is natural design. But instead, now you go out into the world and there's not enough dopamine there. There's not enough mirroring or shared meaning or attunement because the signals are missing. Your brain has been miswired back to the screen. So now when you go in the real world, A, there's not enough dopamine there. And secondarily, your brain sees it as very effortful. So how does that happen? Through adaptation. Your brain is the sharpest thing in the universe, says Einstein. So it doesn't just feel the absence, it reorganizes your brain so that connection feels effortful because you can't get that hit quickly from the easy button. Belonging doesn't feel available. There's no muscle memory there. It's safer to not expect your emotional needs to be met and just to go back to the screen and meet them through high dopamine. But unfortunately, that causes loneliness. Your relational self network doesn't develop in a healthy way. We know this through science. Wagner and Associates have done a study about self-referential thought and thinking. And what they found, which is logical if you think about it, is that the same core brain networks, primarily the medial prefrontal cortex up in the front and the posterior cingulate cortex, they demonstrate that the brain does not just represent the self in isolation, but it constructs identity through neural systems that originally evolved for social cognition and relational processing. What does that mean? That means that your brain is meant to develop your concept of self in relationship to other people, IRL, in the real world, in real life. So the representation of yourself is the knowledge that is built through your relationships. If your RSN is dysregulated, you're not building that identity. Instead, it's fragmented. That fragmentation causes you to feel lonely and disconnected, and like your relationships are a boatload of effort. But it doesn't have to be that way. That's coming from the dysregulation. I see it in brain maps all the time. What does it look like? Excessive high beta, stress, anxiety in that prefrontal cortex, in that medial anterior cingulate cortex or gyrus. We also see suppressed alpha, blue. When the insula is showing suppressed alpha, working to connect with another person becomes so difficult because your nervous system doesn't enter into safety mode for healthy connection. That's what RSN regulation looks like. The green zone on a brain map. High beta comes down, that red comes down, the blue comes up, and your relational brain can be fully active again. You can feel safe. The connection registers. So this leads us to this quote: connection isn't the presence of people, it's felt safety. How are you going to feel safe again? Well, it's easy. You have to train your RSN to shift on in a healthy way, not to be overactivated, not to be underactivated, but to rewire your nervous system to learn that connection can be experienced as safe and joyful again, not intellectually, not emotionally, but neurophysiologically. And then we see this. Being with your family feels good again. Being with your friends, you can laugh. I went out with the besties on Friday night. Apparently, it was restaurant week. We went and we had dinner. The 8 of us sitting at a long table, just enjoying each other's company. Sex and intimacy with your partner. Your brain isn't looking for that very high level of stimulation anymore. So now the nervous system can come down. You don't have to perform. You get to experience the real connection and pleasure, but also joy and presence of being with your partner. If you're constantly seeking those dopamine highs from the screen, you will not be able to do that. Your RSN won't be activated. Your dopamine receptors will be desensitized. It won't happen. This is what leads to what I call SAD, sexual arousal dysfunction, namely ED. And then you can be with your best friends, that true connection. I love this one over here, this image of two friends sharing. So when the besties and I go out and we sit at the table, that's fun, right? That's group fun. But then, which usually happens later in the night, we'll kind of steal away to have private conversations with each other so we can go deeper and we can connect at a real soulful level, sharing the pieces of ourselves that we don't share at a big table. That is how you know your RSN is working for you, not against you. And this is how I help people. I use advanced technology to be able to map your brain to see if your RSN is offline. Then we use that same technology to retrain the areas in your brain so that you can experience connection as safe and joyful again. So you can be present and you can have that experience, but also show up in a way that feels good to you. Let's talk about your brain hack for the day. It is imperative that you regulate first. I've actually just updated the name of my program to Regulate First. You can look for it on the website soon. It's imperative that you understand that none of this is possible unless your nervous system becomes more regulated. Do you have to get to the green zone, the optimal brain pattern? No, but you do have to get closer so that then in the real world, you can orient yourself to another person. Make eye contact. This is so interesting to me because even over the weekend, with screens in front of us, the TV, computers, iPads, phones, people's attention is focused towards their screen, not toward each other. So we had a snow weeks here in the South over this past weekend, and I made people sit at the table with me across from each other. I'm sure your family's kind of like my family. We have an island in our kitchen where you sit next to each other. I think it's pretty wild that we don't sit and look at each other anymore. That's what this orientation is about. Don't sit next to a person on the couch with your phone in your hand. Sit across from them. Make eye contact. Your brain will attune to theirs will attune to yours, and that's how co-regulation happens. That's how you really connect. That's when loneliness stops being something that you feel like you own. That is part of the dysregulation. It is impermanent. It does not have permanency. It can be trained out. Now, after you orient yourself, receive it. Allow yourself to receive the connection. Stay in it, even if you feel uncomfortable. Don't avert your gaze. Laugh. Be with each other. It will reconnect that RSN in your brain to other people, bring you out of your head, be an embodied experience, and get your brain moving in the right direction again. And then, of course, what we're talking about is identity here. Your identity becomes fragmented from getting those dopamine hits from the screen. So what we want is for your authentic self to emerge again. This way, there won't be as much social effort. You'll be more emotionally available. You won't have to try, you will just be. Your identity will shift and will be able to grow in connection with other people. Remembering back to Wagner et al., Wagner and company's work, yourself is meant to develop in the company of other people. So let it. Now, here is a brain training progress visualization graph over time. This is what I want to show you. This red line is high beta. We saw that high beta back on the dysregulated RSN slide. Here, it's incredibly high. High beta is supposed to be at 0.55. At the beginning, which there's just a few sessions here, at the beginning, it's up almost to 2. This is significantly high, but you can see this downward trend and there's still some spikes. I talked with the client. These spikes are actually social interactions, which makes it even more interesting. You can see that it's coming down, 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 and recently it's much more regulated. It still has a little ways to go because it's up near 0.7, but it is on its way. At the same time, slow alpha is actually high here at the beginning, but it comes down and it regulates very quickly. When slow alpha is high, that is an indicator of dopamine desensitization from the screen. This is a person who is stepping away from consuming explicit matter. This is residual high, inflated, slow alpha that then regulates. As the brain comes down, it's moving towards the green zone, and you know what's happening. Less loneliness, more connection, less social anxiety every time these stress spikes don't happen, more wanting to go out into the world, less needing to go back to the screen. Okay, so if you feel disconnected, if you're feeling alone together, like Fallout Boy says, I want you to know it doesn't have to be that way. When your RSN is regulated and it moves back towards that green zone, the life and the authentic creativity and the passion and the purpose that you want, it can emerge from the inside out. Right now, it's stuck in there if your RSN is holding you back. So go over to drtrishleigh.com, schedule an appointment with me so we can look at your brain. I can show you your brain map. It will show the circuits that are overactive, the circuits that are underactive, if you have a dopamine dependency, if your ability to regulate your emotions and feel calm and connected are too low. I will see it and I can show it to you when we have private time together. Go over to drtrishleigh.com and please remember to control your brain, or in fact, it will control you. I'll see you next time.